even though we're messed up and broken, we choose our own way, we choose sin. Father, your word says that your mercies are new every morning. And that's an incredible promise. So Father, I pray as we open your word and continue to worship you by studying it, Father, we will be challenged and encouraged, and we look more like you when we leave. So in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Have a seat.
Was like trying to figure out how to get past me and has no idea what to do. That was great. It's all good. We're just trying to get past it. How's everyone doing tonight? Oh, so y'all are dead. Straight, just dead. Something's killing you, work maybe. Yeah, all those happening. I don't lie. You're sick. I don't know. That was not. Are you guys doing good tonight? Alright, like 0.5% better. Okay, it's okay. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. The Lord's going to use it. He's going to do something. But hey, go ahead if you have a Bible with you, which I hope you do, right? We always are going to open God's Word, so bring your Bible. You know, we're going to use it. Open up to Habakkuk. We're going to be in Habakkuk tonight as we continue rolling with the minor prophets. We've gone through quite a few at this point, right? Nahum last week. We've gone through Micah and Hosea and Joel. So tonight we are going to be looking at the book of Habakkuk. I know, it's kind of small. It's only 3 chapters. It's like just towards the back of the Old Testament. I can't give you it's not like Psalms where, you just open half the middle. But use your table of contents. While you do that, I'm just going to recap what we're going to be looking for tonight. So every time we go through a minor prophet, right, it's like there's 3 things we're looking for. 3 C's, if you will. We're looking for context, right? We want to know, hey, what is going on? Like, what on earth is even happening in this crazy book we're about to look at? So we want to know context. What's happening? What's going on? We want to know connection. Anytime we look at God's Word, even if it's the Old Testament or New Testament, we want to know, how does this apply to our lives? How does it connect to us today? So we're looking for context, what's actually happening in the text, connection, how does it connect to us? And then we're looking for, last but not least, Christ, right? Even though it's the Old Testament and Jesus hasn't even been born yet, every word of Scripture is pointing to Christ, so we want to be sure that we look and say, hey, where do we see Jesus, even in the Old Testament, even in Habakkuk, even in a minor prophet? So we're looking for context, connection, and Christ, what's going on. Let me go ahead and pray for us while you still turn there, but we're just going to be at the very beginning of Habakkuk, chapter 1, verse 1. Let me pray for us. Lord, I just want to thank you for this time, and God, I do pray that your Spirit would fill this place, and would fill me, would be here, and that you would work and move as you see fit. God, I just pray that you would do something awesome through your word as we look at verse by verse and take apart each word and look at the Hebrew and the different things that are going on. God, I pray that you would use your word, and through the power and just wisdom of your Spirit, you would do something awesome in our lives, that we would be encouraged tonight. Yeah, in your name we pray. Amen. All right, so context. What is happening? What's going on? So I've got a chart. Yay! I did this last time, but I love a chart. It just helps me visualize. So I zoomed in a little bit, but this is the same chart we looked at a few weeks ago when we talked about Hosea. But we talked about, Genesis. We talked about Genesis last year a lot. And so Genesis, very beginning of creation, all that stuff. God makes everything. He gives a promise to Abraham, who eventually grows into a great nation, the nation of Israel. And then we kind of get to this point where the kingdom of Israel is not doing so great, and they decide to split. And so we have this northern kingdom of Israel, and then the southern kingdom that was called Judah. And so we've got those two, the north and south, and that's where all these minor prophets have been falling somewhere there of they just split, or it's a minor prophet to the specific north or to the south. And so then we know that things were rocky, right? Every time there's bad stuff happening, right? You're probably a little depressed. I'm not gonna lie, to walk in on Wednesday, because every time it's like, what terrible news are we gonna hear tonight? Are there locusts this time? Did God ask someone to go marry a prostitute? What crazy stuff do we have tonight? So we know that things were not going great for the nation of Israel, because they were not obeying God. They were looking to foreign pagan practices to worship other gods. It was just, they had really bad kings, terrible time. So all of that leads to those exiles, right? You see exile of the north to Assyria, exile of the south to Babylon. So in 722 BC is when that exile of the northern kingdom of Israel was overtaken by the Assyrians, right? The Assyrians come in all big, bad, rough, and tumble, and they overtake the northern kingdom of Israel, and they send them into exile. They overtake their land. And so about 100 years later, in the 600s BC, I don't know what century, I'm really bad with stuff. Okay, but so in that time period, like about 100 years later, we have the south, Judah, exiled to Babylon. Or your Bible may say the Chaldeans. And so the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, they come in and they overtake the south, this nation of Judah, and send them into exile. And so where we're at tonight is Habakkuk, and it happens kind of right in between. So it's like the northern kingdom has already been taken over by Assyria, and the southern kingdom is doing really poorly. It's about to be overtaken by the Babylonians, and Habakkuk is right there, right before the south is going to be overtaken by the Chaldeans, the Babylonians. And so that's where we start, okay? So we are right smack dab in the middle of those two exiles, where the south is about to be overtaken, and Habakkuk's just standing looking around at everything going on in the south, and he's like, what is happening? Everything's falling apart. So that's where we are at context-wise. And so I'm going to let you know, too, Habakkuk itself, like as a name, has a really neat meaning. It means kind of two things. It has this connotation of to wrestle. Or think about it, any wrestlers in the house? It also has a connotation of to embrace. If you've ever seen wrestling, it kind of looks like you're just embracing one another very forcefully. But that's what Habakkuk literally means. It has this meaning of to wrestle and to embrace. And Habakkuk's a really cool book because we see both beautifully. Not only is it the name saying to wrestle and to embrace, but we're going to see some of that as we dive in. So Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 1, we're going to start right there. I've got on the screen for you too. It says, the oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw, O Lord, how long shall I cry for help? And you will not hear? Or cry to you violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see iniquity, and why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise, so the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. We're going to pause right there. What I want you to see and pay attention to is, I have it highlighted, that first word in verse 1, oracle. Oracle is not an odd word. It's used a ton in these minor prophets, and it comes from the Hebrew word that's massa, M-A-S-S-A, and it means burden. So we see it a ton in the beginning, like the oracle given to Joel, the oracle from God given to Hosea. We see all these times that an oracle, this burden, is given to a minor prophet. So it's not really surprising, because when the minor prophets, or the prophets in general, were given a message by God, it felt like a burden. Like it was an important message that they had to share, and it burdened them until they had the opportunity to share it with God's people. But the funny thing is here, it is that burden, but Habakkuk is a very different minor prophet than the ones we've looked at already. The ones we've looked at already normally are like, here's the message for all the people of Israel, and trouble's coming. Like, it's not going to be good. This is a word for all of you. Habakkuk is a lot more personal. It's a lot more intimate of a book. It's not nearly as much of a message given to Habakkuk for the people. There is a part of that later in the book, but much more, it's a very personal conversation between God and Habakkuk, where they're going back and forth. And so it's a way more personal, private glimpse we get to look into. And so when it says oracle, it's crazy, because it's not even this message that God was like, telling him of like, you got to go share this, it's that burden. But it's Habakkuk is starting off, and he says, God, I have a burden starting myself. I have a complaint I want to bring to you. What is happening, God? I got something that I got to say. And that's how Habakkuk starts. It starts with this prophet coming to the Lord and saying, I've got a burden, because as we see there, look at this, so the law is paralyzed. Destruction and violence are before me. Like, how long will you not save? How long shall I cry for help? Habakkuk is saying, God, I'm looking around at this southern kingdom of Judah, and it's jacked up. It's jacked up. Like, the kings are terrible. There's injustice happening everywhere. The people are worshiping pagan gods. Like, what is happening, God? It is jacked up. And you're a holy and you're a righteous God, so where the heck are you? Where are you, God? You're a righteous God. You're supposed to take care of this. You don't let this go unseen or unspoken to. You are a righteous judge who deals with sin, who deals with unrighteousness, and who needs to be fixing and cleaning up your people because they are messing it up right now. And that's where this prophet is at. He says, man, what is happening? It's burdening me that you are a righteous God and a pure and a holy God and a faithful God. But I look around and where are you? There's injustice happening. There's pagan worship happening. There's harlotry happening. There's all this chaos and craziness happening. But you haven't dealt with it yet. So what's happening, God? Where are you at? And so where Habakkuk is confused, it immediately dives us from context into connection and where it applies to us. And so for our points of where it applies to us, I've got 3 W's for you tonight. And so our first W that we see, if you're taking notes, is that Habakkuk wrestles with God. He's wrestling with God, which sounds, I feel like, really foreign to us. Like, well, that feels weird. I think everyone's like a little uncomfortable anyways. Like, who the heck is Habakkuk talking to God like that? Like, what? He gonna get smited. Like, he gonna got fire rained down on him. Like, it sounds like, who the heck would do that? Like, that's not the way this works. Like, he doesn't know. Like, you just shut up and listen and do the crazy stuff God asks you to. Like Hosea, going to marry whore. Like, be quiet. What are you doing? But no, I love this because we see this personal encounter. And our first point that we can apply to our lives is that we see that we have the opportunity to wrestle with God like Habakkuk did. And for all of us in this room, we all wrestle with something. So that's not the question. Like, the question isn't like, oh, you're a wrestler. Like, but no, I'm not a wrestler. But like, we all wrestle through things in life. Like, right? We all wrestle through different things. It might look different. We might wrestle with doubts. Maybe we have doubts. For a lot of you, honestly, because you're high schoolers, you've probably been raised in church most of your life, if you're anything like me. And you might be at a point now where you're like, do I really believe this? Like, what does this actually mean? Like, and you've got some doubts. Maybe you've got questions or circumstances that are really challenging and you're wrestling through circumstances or just confusion in general. Like, I don't understand what's happening around me. I don't understand how the world can be as messed up as it is, but we can serve a loving God, like the same type of things Habakkuk is asking. We wrestle with sin and anxiety and just questions. We have all these things that we all wrestle with. So the question isn't, do we wrestle? We all wrestle with stuff in life, but the question is, who do we wrestle with about those things? Okay? The question is, who do we wrestle with about those things? Because we all wrestle through things. We all wrestle through questions and doubts and anxieties and fears and confusion and sin and anxiety. We wrestle through all those things. But the question is, who are we going to wrestle through those things about with? Because for some of us, I think I probably lean this way. I'm just like, I'm going to wrestle it out with myself. Right? Like, put on a happy face and I'm going to just hide it all inside and I'm going to like tear myself apart inside, just trying to figure it out and like logically work my way through all my questions and doubts and fears, and I'm just going to like wrestle through it with myself. And like, I don't need to talk to anyone. I don't need to go see a counselor. I don't need to tell my friends what's going on in my life. Like, my parents don't need to know. Like, I'm good. I'm just going to figure it out on my own. I'm going to wrestle with myself about it. That's one way we tend to handle it. Maybe you're like, no, I'm going to wrestle about it with other people. I have like one of those easygoing temperaments overall. Like, can get along with most anyone. That's like, I don't thrive in conflict. Like, I kind of am terrified of it, right? Like, I just like want to make peace. Like, if you want to know where we want to go to eat, like, I don't care. Like, wherever you want to go eat. Like, no conflict. Like, let's just figure it out. Not a big deal. So I'm like kind of that tendency. But there was one person always growing up that all of my wrath came out on. And her name was Mom. Anyone else with me? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, Mom, Dad, maybe brother or sister. But seriously, like, maybe it's just anyone. But I think we even sometimes wrestle with people. Or for me, like, I keep it all together around everyone else. Like, very easygoing, very amicable. And then my mom would say something like, seriously, so simple. Like, as a high schooler, she'd be like, hey, you're already out of the house. Could you just, like, go pick up a few groceries? And it was like, ah! No! And, like, rage from weeks that was building up inside me just came out, unleashed all at my mother. And, like, this poor woman, like, I don't know how she put up with me for years and years. Like, even now, like, I have to fight against those tendencies because for whatever reason, my mom is that one person that, like, it just would come out of me. And so, like, I think we even wrestle with people where we're like, I'm going to take out all my, there were times in high school, I'm not joking, I'm in middle school, I knew I picked a fight with my mom just because I could. Like, what's wrong? Like, just because I, had some anxiousness I need to work out, I'm like, I'm going to pick a fight with my mom. Like, yeah, let's yell today. Like, what is wrong with me? And, we might wrestle through these things, not with ourselves, but outwardly, with other people. Maybe we are just, going around the halls, getting in fights with everyone we come in contact with, or just mean-mugging everyone we relate with, or, we can't go a day without screaming at our brother or sister. Maybe we're tending to wrestle with these things, even though we don't really understand everything going on. We're just, wrestling through it with other people around us and taking all of our doubts and confusion, fear, and just I'm going to deal with it out here. So get ready. That's, I think, one way we do too. Maybe it's even church. It could be every single Wednesday or Sunday, it's I'm not going, and it's this fight with you and your parents, or even internally of no, I've got questions, I've got fears, I've got doubts, and the church is just the man, gotta stick it to the man. And that's the fight and the wrestle of I'm gonna wrestle where no, I'm done with this. The second I get out of my parents' house, I'm out of here, church is not for me, because it's jacked up and I don't get it. Or the one that seems bizarre, right? We could choose to wrestle with God. Which sounds so weird, why would we ever have the right to be able to wrestle with God? But God, honestly, He doesn't just say, hey, you can wrestle with me. He says, no, I'm inviting you to wrestle through those things with me. We're not going to turn there, but if you think back to Genesis, in Genesis 32, we had Abraham, Isaac, and then Isaac had a son named Jacob, two sons, Jacob and Esau. But Jacob ended up actually having his name changed to Israel, and it happened from this crazy time where Jacob was traveling, and it's at night, and his family's on the other side of this river, and so he's waiting to cross the river the next day, and in the middle of the night, this man, who we believe seems to be the first one of the first Christophanies, Christ in flesh, coming and interacting with Jacob, appears out of nowhere and begins to wrestle with Jacob. So did you catch that? This dude appears out of nowhere and starts to wrestle, picks a fight to wrestle with Jacob. Jacob did not get the arena and lace up his leather mask and come out and say, WWE SmackDown! Come on, God! I want to do it out with you! That was not what happened. No. Jacob was minding his own business, trying to take a nap, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes God Himself inviting Jacob into a wrestling match because God knew his heart and said, you got a lot of junk you got to work out. So guess what? Let's work it out. Let's wrestle through this together. And God invites Jacob in. And then his name's actually changed by the morning from Jacob to Israel, meaning for you to have striven with God and men and prevailed. That there was this wrestling match happening between Jacob and the Lord that changed him forever moving forward. So God doesn't just say, hey, you're allowed to wrestle with me. He looks at us and He says, no, I'm inviting you in to wrestle through all that junk that you don't know how to process. I'm inviting you to come and wrestle through with me because God can handle it. God can handle it, right? God is big enough and powerful enough to handle our blows of what we need to wrestle through. And the questions, the honest questions of, do you really exist or not? Guess what? God can handle that type of question. He can handle that. He can handle our doubts about, I don't really get how creation can be real when science seems to point to other things like evolution, like what's happening. He can handle those types of doubts and question and confusion and anxieties. And so He welcomes us in because He can handle it. And because ultimately wrestling is still intimacy. Like I said, are there any wrestlers? I'm just curious. Anyone? Raise hands. Hey, we got one wrestling in the house. Okay, I may be wrong, but don't you you seriously start and one dude's down, I don't even know, tabletop, and then one guy's kind of around him, right? Am I right on this? Yeah? Okay, but you start where you're arms around, look at that, that is an intimate position, you're not squared across the opposite sides of the field in football or 10 yards away or whatever, on opposite sides of a net in volleyball, you're physically touching one another. Yes, wrestling may be aggressive, but at the same time, it's still a closeness. And so God says, I invite you in because guess what? Even though it's an aggressive form of processing through, you're still close to me if we're wrestling through it. And so God welcomes us in to wrestle through with Him. So let's go ahead and pick up in verse 5. Verse 5 says, Look among the nations and see. Wonder and be astounded, for I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swift to devour. They all come for violence, all their faces forward. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff, and at rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress, for they pile of earth and take it. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on. Guilty men whose own might is their God. This is God responding to Habakkuk. Your Bible may have had it. Mine has a little title header. It says, the Lord's answer. So Habakkuk starts and says, I got a complaint. I got a grievance. God, I don't get it. What's going on? There's a lot of jacked up stuff happening, and you're a holy, righteous God, so why aren't you dealing with it? And I know that God welcomes us in and says, hey, you can wrestle with me. We know it because he responds to Habakkuk. He didn't just snap his fingers and Habakkuk dropped dead. Like, there's crazy moments of God's justice and judgment that we see. Like, he could have done that. And that's not what happened. God responds with Habakkuk because he says, I'm inviting you to come wrestle through this with me. And I've got a response for you. And so, crazy enough, Habakkuk actually goes for another round. So we're going to pick up in verse 12. So right where we left off, verse 12. Are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof. You who are pure of eyes, you who are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong. Why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? You make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up with a hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his dragnet, so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net and makes offerings to his dragnet. For by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever? Habakkuk comes back for another round because God's response was, hey, I know you feel like I'm not doing stuff. You feel like I'm just letting things run amok, but Habakkuk, you don't even know. While you were just sitting here taking it all in, taking in how Judah has fallen, taking in how this nation of Israel has strayed so far from me, and strayed to injustice, strayed to pagan gods. As you were just observing, I was over here working. And that Chaldean army, the Babylonians, I was building up their army. I was getting them ready. They were practicing their marching drills, and they were getting ready because the Chaldeans are about to carry out my justice. I'm going to use them as a tool to carry out justice where Judah has fallen. And so God's saying, well, you were just taking it in. I was already working to deal justly. But now Habakkuk comes back for another round because he's like, whoa, what? Okay, yeah, Lord, Judah, we don't have it all together. Okay, I get it. We're messed up. But the Chaldeans, they're like mercilessly killing nations forever and ever. Like, we're like bad, but they're like the worst of the worst. Like, there's a discrepancy here, Lord. Like, clearly you didn't think this through fully. Like, say what? Did I hear that right? Like, that's what he says. He's like, I gotta come back because I'm still confused, and I still gotta complain, and still gotta wrestle through this, because why are you sending an evil nation like Babylon to teach your chosen people a lesson? Doesn't make sense to me. But let's look at verse 1 of chapter 2. Verse 1 of chapter 2. This is still Habakkuk speaking, okay? So he just laid out his whole second complaint and misunderstanding and like, what are you doing, God? And this is how it follows up. I will take my stand at my watch post and station myself on the tower and look out to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint. I've got a watch post highlighted up here, because that takes us to our second W. Not only does God welcome us in to wrestle, but Habakkuk, when he laid out this complaint before God and says, I got to wrestle through this, he says, he looks on and he says, okay, God, I've laid out my complaint. I'm wrestling through with this, but I'm not just going to like okay, see ya, like, nice wrestling match, have a good time, I'm gonna go get some Five Guys. Like, no. He's like, I'm gonna take my stand at my watch post. And like a watchman would gaze out on the entire land to be sure to see anything, if any army is coming against us, or if there's anything going on, or anyone coming and going. Like a watchman would stand at the top of the watchtower on the wall. I'm going to stand at my watch post and look for your response, Lord. So God welcomes us to wrestle with him, but also he tells us we need to watch for his response. We have to actively watch for God's response. Because wrestling really doesn't benefit us much if we don't listen and look for and watch for what God wants to say and how he wants to respond to us. Like, if I just screamed at my mom when I was in high school and then just like went and got froyo and like never had a conversation with her again, it wouldn't do any good. Like, she normally would be like, whoa, calm down, like, what's going on? And then it gave me a time to like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to unload 3 weeks of chaos in my brain on you, but this is going on. And it gave me time to process through it, right? Like, as she responded and I saw that she responded, then I had a chance to kind of like work through some of it. The Lord tells us, yeah, come wrestle with me through it, but then be careful to watch and look for my response, because I want to respond to the things that you're dealing with. And think about it, we have to watch, it's an active type of watching. Like, that's what I highlighted. I love that he says, I'm on the tower like a watchman, on my watch post looking out, because it's a very active type of watching. Because I've worked with Corey and Hunter long enough now to know when they're listening and when they're not listening. I've also been married long enough to know my husband Jacob is listening and often not listening. Corey worked with longer, so Corey, I know pretty much if I don't have eye contact, like if he's on his phone, like he might be doing a work email, but he's got some crazy privacy screen, so it looks like his phone's just off all the time. But like with Corey, if he's like got his phone in his hand, like probably didn't hear a word I said. Like, I mean, like literally it could be like me and him sitting right here, we're the only 2 people in the room, and I'm very directly, I'm not a quiet person. Jacob thinks I yell constantly, that's just my volume sits up here. But so like, people agree. Okay, so I'm not a quiet talker, right? If it's just Corey and I in a room and I'm talking to him, there's no way he could miss my voice trying to communicate with him. Well, if his phone is anywhere remotely in his hand, or if any type of sports were being talked about in the like 2 to 4 minutes beforehand, he's probably gone. His mind is on his phone, his mind is on whatever sports were just being talked about, and like Kentucky basketball, cats got cats. Like, he is not with me presently in that moment. So I have to wait and be like, hey, Corey. And then like when he looks up and we have eye contact, then I can restart my whole spiel all over again. And I know he's actually processing it, yeah! Jacob, if it's any Saturday in fall football season, I can't even try all day. It's gonna be, if he's hungry, nothing. Like, we could be driving a car, just Jacob and I in a car. If he's remotely hungry and has food on his brain, he will not comprehend a word I've said until a Five Guys burger has lodged itself into his stomach, okay? That's like, I know these things now after 2 years of marriage and 4 years of working together. They're like, I may be talking to you very directly. My lips may be moving, my volume may be high, but you have to be watching me to actually process what I'm trying to communicate to you. We have to watch for what God's trying to say to us, because just like someone, Jacob or Corey may zone me out sometimes, when they take attention to watch and see if I'm communicating to them, then they process and understand what I'm saying and they communicate back with me. Hunter's a little different because Hunter listens, but he's a processor. So Hunter, I didn't know. I just thought he didn't listen to me for like a long time before we started working together. But Hunter, he's the processor where the whole time, I'm confident now, he's listening. He's just digesting and processing, and he's like figuring out, putting together what you're saying, putting his thoughts into columns and like little spots, and like, okay, this goes here, and this goes here, and I feel like this way about it. And he's listening, but he may not respond. He may respond immediately. He may not respond for like 10 more minutes. He may not respond to like in an hour when our meeting's kind of coming to close. He might respond for like 2 days. Like, it's really like that wide open of a gamut. So with Hunter, I've learned he might be listening and watching to see what I'm communicating to him, but like the response like may not be immediate. I have to be watching, and when I communicate to him and like, hey, this is going on, I have to watch for Hunter to respond back to me, because if I'm not paying attention, I may miss it. Because sometimes he immediately responds, but if I'm not waiting and watching to see, well, in an hour, does he have something to share? Or tomorrow, when we see each other, does he have something to share? I may miss it. And so with the Lord, we have to watch for God's response, because sometimes we just zone things out, and if we're not actively watching them, we're going to miss it. But also, too, the Lord doesn't always respond immediately. So if we're not actively watching it, we don't know what the Lord's timing may be. Hunter just is processing, and so he may not always respond immediately when I want him to, but he's going to respond to me eventually. The Lord will always respond, but his timing is his timing. And so we have to watch actively to catch the Lord's response, so we don't just zone it out or miss it, and so we are there in the present timing that the Lord has for us. And so as we wrestle with the Lord, we have to watch for the Lord's response. And we're going to pick up in chapter 2, verse 2. And so this is the Lord responding back to Habakkuk, right? Habakkuk has said, I'm standing on my watchtower. God, I know you're going to respond, so I'm actively watching and waiting for you to respond. And God responds, and he says, and the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by faith. We're going to pause there. But God responds. His timing may look different than what we want, and we have to be active to catch it and hear what he's trying to say to us, because right? Those are the practical things I think we know, but we just want to shrug off. But like, how do we actively watch for God's response in our life? Well, guess what? He wrote us a letter. Not a letter, he wrote us a book. He gave us a whole book. And he says, I want to respond to you. Are you watching for my response? Are you reading each day to see what I might want to respond to you? Are you spending time in solitude and silence and time in prayer with me to actually watch actively for my response to you? Because he did. He responded to Habakkuk. And what did he say? He said, hey, Habakkuk, I see it. I know that you're confused. I know that Judah is not living life right, and their sin needs to be dealt with. Well, guess what? I'm sending Chaldeans. Okay, Habakkuk, I get it. You're confused. Why am I sending an even more evil pagan nation to come carry out justice? Well, Habakkuk, I'm going to carry out justice with the Chaldeans too. Don't worry about it. I've got it planned. I'm gonna carry out my justice and judgment with both Israel and the Chaldeans and the Assyrians in my perfect timing. But all I need you to do, Habakkuk, hey, if it seems slow, just wait. It's not going to delay. It's going to surely come. It's a promise. I'm going to act out the fullness of who I am, but I just need you to wait, Habakkuk. I know you're confused. I know you've got questions, but just wait, because I've got promises, and they're going to be faithful. So wait on God's promises. And that takes us to Habakkuk 3. We're going to flip over a page. Look at verse 16. Chapter 3, verse 16. We're just going to look at that last little section, starting with yet. In Habakkuk 3, verse 16, kind of B at the end, it says, yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. This is Habakkuk responding. He goes through a beautiful just remembrance and kind of a prayer and song of who God is all through chapter 3. And man, that God is faithful. When God comes, the mountains tremble and quake like our God is an awesome God. And he gets to the end of this whole beautiful song talking about who God is. And what he responds with is, okay, God, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for your justice and your judgment and your promises to be fulfilled in your timing. And so that's our third W. We wrestle with God. We have to watch for God's promises, or watch for the Lord's response. And then last but not least, we're going to wait on God's promises. Because God does have promises, but we got to wait on his timing. And waiting, I want to connect it with this idea of perseverance, right? Like waiting on God, it really is, it's a conscious decision to persevere. And so I don't know what you think of when you think of perseverance. I tend to think of sports and working out and running, probably because I hate all of them. So it takes perseverance. Like reading a book, if it's a good fiction book, like I gotta persevere. I have to like stop put it down. But like if I'm binge watching a show on Netflix, like Stranger Things, like I don't have to persevere through that. I'm not like, oh, okay, well sometimes at like 4 in the morning, I am like, can I keep my eyes open? But like overall, you're not persevering there, right? But if I'm running a mile or like a 5K or something, like I am actively persevering, right? Like actively trusting that there is a goal and a promise that I'm working towards in this 5K or this workout, that I'm going to keep going to get to that goal, right? Like if you're running a 5K, like if you're like good at things like running, not like me, you might, like Tyler, you might actually be running to like win or like to get a personal record. Like I faith in you, man. So you might be running to like get a PR, you may be running to get a medal, you may be running to just like me, like get to the finish line without passing out, like making it through an Alabama game this past Saturday in 100-degree heat with not passing out from a heat stroke. That was like perseverance. Like I stayed awake and didn't have to be carried on stretcher. Yes. So like perseverance is moving towards that goal, moving towards a promise, right? Because we trust like, oh, if I finish this 5K, I'm gonna get the Disney princess like medal thing that they do at Disney 5K. It's like, right? Like you get to wear a tutu and a crown maybe, and you get like a medal. I don't know. Maybe you like win. Maybe you, if you're just working out, you're trusting, when I finish this workout, my muscles are gonna be built up stronger than they were when I started. So I continue to consciously move towards the goal in perseverance, okay? That's what this idea, when I say wait on God's promises, I mean like an active perseverance to wait on what God has said He will do in our lives. So let's read Habakkuk 3, pick up in verse 17, and we're going to finish out the book right here. It says, though the fig trees should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like deer's. He makes me tread on high places. And Habakkuk has come from a place at the beginning of this book of wrestling with God to now worshiping God. He's rejoicing. Even though the circumstances haven't really changed, right? Like, there's no olives, there's no food, there's no animals, we're about to be overtaken by the Chaldeans, like, our circumstances are terrible, but I'm not wrestling anymore. I'm worshiping because I'm waiting on your promises. And though my circumstances don't show it all right now, I trust and I will wait and I will persevere on your promises, God. He is able to worship in all circumstances because he waits on God's promises. It's a beautiful picture. God's going to take our feet and make them like a deer's. He makes us tread on high places. If you've ever gone to High Point, like, think about it. I don't want to scale any of, if you ever saw the movie Free Solo, For the Love, this dude, like, climbs, like, this giant El Capitan maybe, like, with nothing on, like no rope, like no safety thing, like he scales this mountain like without any type of like crash pad, and he does it. It's crazy. There's definitely multiple times in the movie where like he's surely gonna die. I got a High Point on the bouldering wall, not very tall, and I am scared to climb to the top because I'm like gonna fall and probably break an ankle. That would just be me. So like I'm like I want Corey or Hunter or Tyler or Griffin, someone that I know can belay me and like hold on to a rope so when I get to the top and surely don't make it, I'm not going to die to my death. Like I want the safety line. I don't want the auto belay. Like I don't always trust the thing. I want a person holding a rope, holding my body weight so I know I don't die. Like that's what this is giving us that picture of. Like the Lord is our strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on high places. The Lord is that safety rope that you get when you go to High Point. When you are climbing to the top of the crazy tall walls and there's a person holding you, that rope that's going to keep you from falling to your death or breaking your neck, like that is a picture of God being our strength, taking our feet to high places. Because once I've got a safety rope on, I freak out a little bit in the bouldering room, no joke. Like I get on like the half wall. If I go on the ones where they start curving, I'm like, I'm going to break something. I freak out. I start like having a little panic attack. But I can scale the super tall walls in the other room when I have a rope on. Because I feel secure. And I have confidence that Corey's not going to drop me. Whoever's below me, they're not going to drop me because I've got a rope holding me secure, and I don't get fearful then. I have a confidence I can scale this wall, and even if I mess up, guess what? I'm not going to die to my death. And that's what God becomes for Habakkuk. God, the Lord, is my strength. He is my safety line, my safety rope, where I confidently can climb to high places, even though my circumstances seem crazy, even though I've got things to wrestle through. The Lord holds me secure. And so that brings us to Christ. Where do we see Christ in here, right? We've seen our context, we know what's going on, we see how it connects to us, that we get to wrestle with the Lord, He invites us to. We have to watch for how He's going to respond, though, and then we have to wait on His promises. But Christ, we see Him here because honestly, when we learn about Habakkuk's frustrations with Judah being jacked up with sin, and then the Chaldeans being even more jacked up with sin, guys, we are both. We are, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we're Israel or Judah or the Assyrians or the Chaldeans. It doesn't matter. They're all unrighteous people jacked up by sin that need God's righteousness. They are all unrighteous. And that's where we see Christ in here, because Jesus came to be unrighteous in our place so we could become righteous by faith in Him. We are just like, it doesn't matter if you feel like you line up with Israel or the Assyrians or the Babylonians. They're all unrighteous and they all need God in their life to fix them. And that's where we see Jesus, because it's pointing to the promise that come the New Testament, Jesus came to take on our unrighteousness so we could have His righteousness by faith in Him. And so where God promised judgment, right? That's what He told Habakkuk all the way through. At the very end, even He's like, I promise you, Habakkuk, judgment is coming. It came for Israel, it came for Judah, and it's coming for the Assyrians, and it's coming for Babylon, and it's coming for us. Guess what? Judgment is coming. I promise you that. But while I promise judgment, I'm also sending Jesus to take your judgment for you, so you can be saved through faith. So we see Jesus in the fact that where we deserve that judgment and God's judgment does come, Jesus took on God's judgment for us so we don't have to bear it on our own. And last but not least, you don't have to turn there, but I'm going to just read you Hebrews 10, verse 35 through 39. I think I have it on the screens. This echoes back to Habakkuk. It echoes back to a phrase in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. And so I'm going to read this because it ties it all together, right? We're going from Old Testament to New Testament. And Hebrews says this, therefore do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. For yet a little while, and the coming one will come and will not delay, but my righteous one shall live by faith. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls. Don't throw away your confidence. This whole passage, it's saying God's given you promises. You saw Him fulfill His promises in the Old Testament to Habakkuk and all these minor prophets. You saw Him fulfill the promise to not only bring judgment, but to save you from judgment through Jesus. And He's got promises that He's coming back for you again. So don't throw away your confidence. You have a confidence that you can wait on God's promises and persevere on that. And so that is our call for tonight. Our call is to persevere. The call and the encouragement is to just keep moving forward. Like if you were running a marathon, to just keep running. Just keep taking the next step. I know we have things we might need to wrestle about, or it's hard. It takes discipline and encouragement from others to watch for God, what God wants to say to us. It takes discipline to spend time in solitude with Him and read His Word. It's not easy to wait and wait and wait on God's timing. A lot of you in this room may say, I know God's called me to marriage, but I'm not going to lie, for a lot of you in this room, that might be what God's calling is, but most likely you might not even meet that person for another 10 years. And God is telling you in the meantime, I'm promising you a spouse that you're going to love. They're going to rock your world. They're going to encourage you to know me. They're going to be great. But I need you to wait so I can prepare them and prepare you. And 10 years is a long time to wait. And so it's not easy to wait on God's promises. So that's where Hebrews reminds us. It says, may the righteous live by faith. So trust God and just keep going. Just keep running. Just keep moving and continue to persevere in wrestling with the Lord. and watching for his response and waiting on his promises. So Lord, we come before you tonight, and I just ask that you would help us to persevere, that we would continue to run and continue to move and continue to go towards your promises. God, your promises didn't fail Habakkuk, and we know and trust that your promises aren't going to fail us. So Lord, will you be with us in this room, that as we step out of this place, that we would wrestle. If we've got confusion, if we've got questions or anxieties, God, I pray that we feel open and honest enough to wrestle with you through that. Lord, if we need to just watch and be more attentive to watch for you, God, I hope you would bolster us and give us a desire, a supernatural desire, that you make us hunger and thirst for righteousness, that we would want you desperately, that we would want to watch for what you have to say. And Lord, for those in this room that are just having a hard time waiting, just waiting for your promises and waiting on what you're going to do and waiting on your faithfulness, God, I pray that they persevere too, that people would come alongside them and encourage them in that. They'd be encouraged by your spirit even tonight to continue to keep going, keep running, and keep moving, trusting that you're going to be faithful like you always have been. So Lord, we love you. Thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Hey, guys, before we get out of here, a couple announcements. One,